Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Why am I the one who's coming first all the time?
MashaAllah. Wonderful.
Sorry for the bad light.
No worries. Have you thought about what you will do about the paper?
Yeah, one one person I will ask you to allow me to write about Muhammad Assad, the convert, because if you let me, I've been curious about him for a long time. I think he's a spectacular figure. I will be into the writing the paper. I
Yes.
will have passion to explore this subject. And the second idea that came to my mind, I remember there was a Tatar who translated the very first Quran in Poland. I will try to find out who he was, and I think this could be an interesting story too. This very first translation of Quran into Polish language. So I will starting tomorrow. I will see how much materials I can find about it.
Yeah, and even if the materials are limited, don't
Okay,
worry. It doesn't have to be too much.
thank you, because I prefer to write about things I'm curious about. It
Yes.
really helps than like feeling like uh,
Good. And what about for the gender class?
the gender the gender class. Because it was about famous women. I'm still thinking about it. Maybe I will propose you uh, an interview with some sisters living in Poland about the realities of their life in a form of research, maybe a bunch of interviews, or or I don't have any other idea by now. We'll see.
Very good.
I,
Evans,
I,
welcome to class.
I will keep in touch with you and let you know for your
Yes.
approval. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Good to see you, Evans.
Good to see you too.
Where are you located in Zimbabwe?
In Harare, in the
Harare.
capital
Okay.
Harare. Yes.
Wonderful. Welcome, Natalie. Natalie, can you hear us?
Evans, nice to see you. Finally, we as students can see each other a
Yeah.
little bit.
I'm very happy that we are able to interact with each other and to learn from each other and to share with each other. And please use this class as an opportunity to become more interactive with each other, and perhaps there can be some friendships and cooperative relations that result. Inshallah, we hope this will be possible. I will start the gender class by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We thank our Lord and Creator for this opportunity to come together and to share what knowledge we have, and then to use that knowledge, hopefully, for improving ourselves, improving our families, improving our communities, and also eventually improving the world. I am the type of professor that feels that every class should be as useful as possible for everybody, especially our wonderful students. And so, to me, the point of the class is not just sharing this information among us, but using it to do something. For a long time, I believe that one of the reasons we are on this blessed earth is to make this world a better place. I realize, of course, it's difficult and it takes time and money and effort, but the alternative. Yes, welcome, Natalie. Good to see you. The alternative of doing nothing, I think, is not going to help anybody. And as you know, throughout history, unfortunately, good things happen when people, fortunately, good things happen when people try to be helpful to themselves and to others. and the opposite happens. Bad things, negative things happen when people are not interested in improvement. They are not interested in what happens in the world. It's not good when people do not have an interest in making the world a better place. So, in my opinion, I will try my best to help you take whatever is being shared in this class, to then use that to make everybody and to make the world a better place. I'm not here to judge anybody or to put anybody down. That is something that is left up to each individual. But for me, one of the questions I used to ask myself when I was taking classes throughout my life is, what's the point? Why am I taking this class? Where is it going to go? The research has shown that the vast majority of students, once the class is over, within a short amount of time, they have forgotten everything or most things in the class. And this is, quite unfortunate. My area in sociology, when I got my PhD in sociology, is sociology of education. And if education involves spending thousands of hours of students in the classroom and listening to lectures, and the result is that most of it just goes away and is no longer any useful part of a student's life, then this is a tremendous tragedy, and it's very sad. And so that's why one of the reasons I encourage you to ask questions is because in order for information to be useful and to be helpful, we need to be able to perceive it and to be able to make it usable, which is not easy, right? One of the things we have to do to benefit from lectures and courses is we have to think. But most of us have never been taught how to think about thinking, right? We think about things and we think about maybe ideas, but do we really understand how we think? What makes us think? What improves our thinking? So they call this thinking about thinking. And unfortunately, the tragedy is there's a big discrepancy in most parts of the world between men and women in this regard. Men are somehow expected to do the thinking and the planning and the future orientation. And women, unfortunately, in many societies, that is not their perceived role. Their role is to be told by men what to do, and then they just do it without necessarily questioning or understanding, which is very problematic. So, also, I want to mention that in my class, I like to have some humor when we have a chance to tell jokes, to tell interesting stories, and to connect on that level. I do not like dry, long lectures. I can do it. Of course, I have been trained to do it, but that is not my preference. So as soon as any of you in every class think of something to share with the class, and if it's humorous, even better, then I think that will be of benefit to anybody. Has any of you heard of any good joke lately or any interesting thing? Uh, I know a lot of what we hear on the news and what we hear from people and what is in the social media tends to be bad news. We don't know, will there be a war between Ukraine and Russia? Some people say yes, some people say no. And then we hear about the floods and we hear about refugees and we hear about the destruction of the environment. Which is true. All of that is true, but the media is so focused on the negative things when in fact there's so much positive things going on in this world. COVID, horrible thing, terrible. But there has been a lot of good for some people in some cases. And one example is that COVID has allowed a lot of people or set up a situation where a lot of people are working from home, including many of my friends and relatives, including myself. Now I am teaching you from my house, and I can be teaching you from anywhere in the world as long as I have my laptop. Welcome, Ruhia. Welcome to class.
Me personally, I benefit a lot from this situation, and all the education, especially in Russia now, go all online. So as I live abroad for many years, I couldn't join many interesting classes, but since 2 years, I'm really enjoying. So for me, I got my positive effect from this COVID story. I am happy for this. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for sharing, Natalie. And you see, you have identified something very interesting, and that is a very big change, according to many people, in education. You see, the old idea of education is you have to have the teacher and then the students, and the teacher is telling the students things. Now, as a result of COVID and technology, education has been transformed. I am so lucky that I can be with you, whether you are in Poland or whether you are in Russia or whether you are in Zimbabwe or Bangladesh or Thailand. I can interact. It's not the same thing as live, face-to-face. I agree. Now, when it comes to male-female relations, how are people finding their husband or wife? When the internet started, people figured out that you can find your future husband, your future wife online. And I know of at least one Muslim couple where this is how they got to know each other. Okay. I don't know about the success of those types of relationships.
But also, they open many ways for cheating using internet. So, there is always another side of the process. We have to remember that.
Yes, absolutely. That's another good point. As we know from our understanding of human behavior, everything can have a positive side or a negative side, which is why it's so important for us to focus always on improvement, so that the positive side is increasing and stronger, and the negative side is decreasing. When I had the chance to go to Poland before COVID, I went to the concentration camps in Poland that were set up by the Nazis during World War II. A very horrible and terrible experience. And many people, unfortunately, in our generation really don't know much about what happened in World War II and the tragedies, whether it was Poland or Ukraine or Russia or other places. But a lot of people also don't realize that although the Nazis focused a lot on exterminating Jews, they killed and exterminated a lot of Polish people, especially the intellectuals, especially the people who are important for society, the religious leaders. And so one of the countries that suffered the most from the horrible fascist Nazi German regime were Polish people. And their country was divided and it was destroyed, and Warsaw was almost completely reduced to rocks and stones. So why would it then be important to study the good and bad parts of history? You see,
so we never repeat the biggest mistakes.
Yeah, exactly, right. We do not want to repeat mistakes.
Shows that we're not always learning, and we repeat it. We need to repeat it 5-7 times, then we start thinking. We're still slow in thinking.
Absolutely, Natalie. Thank you. We are very slow in thinking, and it is very unfortunate that many people do not know about the kinds of things that happened in the past, and even those who know may still repeat the mistakes. Hopefully, in our class, we will also try to understand the past, but we will try to use that knowledge and information so that the future does not repeat the mistakes of the past. So although there has been a lot of violence and a lot of injustice against women in the past, we want to change this, or hopefully we will try to change this, and everybody will benefit. Men do not benefit when women are dealt with in a violent and oppressive way, even though some men may think that it gives them more power, but in the end, everybody suffers. And so this is true from the beginning of human history until today. So if we look at the Quran, for example, according to history in the Quran, the first couple were who? Who were the first historical humans mentioned in the Quran?
Eva, Adam.
Yes, Eve and Adam and Eve. Okay. Now it's interesting that the stories about Adam and Eve in the Quran are limited, and so people add to those stories from other sources. So you might ask people, well, Adam came from what? And they might say, well, it came from clay or came from God. Where did Eve come from? Some people still think that Eve came from one of Adam's ribs. This is a common story. Even many Muslims believe this, or they describe Eve as a crooked rib. This is not from the Quran. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the traditions that were completely verified, never said this. These are stories that came from Christian traditions or other Middle Eastern traditions. So you see, immediately from the beginning, they put Eve as something secondary to Adam. And then it becomes also worse, because what was the big mistake that supposedly Adam did when he was in the Garden of Eden? What mistake did he make?
He listened to Eva. This was his mistake.
Okay, and what action did that made God upset with Adam?
Sending him to earth.
Okay, so as a result of Adam's bad deed, God took Adam and Eve out of the garden. But this deed was disobeying God, right? God said, don't eat from this apple, don't eat from this tree, and they did. But you see, in some traditions, they blame Eve as the one who tempted Adam, or who got Adam to listen to the snake. Yeah, so in the Bible, right, Eve gave Adam an apple, and they were not supposed to eat it, and then he ate it. Whereas in the Muslim tradition, there's no such thing. Eve and Adam were both tempted, and both committed a mistake, and they were both told by God to go down from the Garden of Eden. So again, when you set it up so that the problem is with Eve, and Eve is causing the great person who is Adam to do mistakes. So already women, the female gender, is being put in a position of negativity and temptation, and causing men to disobey their creator. We need to be aware of the effect of these stories on human perception, and how women think about themselves and how men think about women. Okay, at least in the Muslim tradition, according to many Muslim scholars, Eve and Adam were equally created by God, and Eve and Adam were both making the mistake of disobeying God by eating from the tree. And both came to what is considered earth, and they became the great mother Eve and father Adam. Then we have the story of Noah in the Quran. Nuh had a wife, right, and had children, had a son. What was the role of Nuh, the wife of Nuh, in the story of Noah and the flood? What did she do? Anybody remember from the story of Noah and the ark, the great flood?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I haven't listened about Noah's wife, but just I know about his son.
Yes. What did?
So
Uh-huh.
yeah. The son did not follow the father to invite him into the boat, right?
Yes.
So he went. He swam to the mountain.
Yes. Correct, Salihah. Thank you. In the Muslim version, okay, Nuh obeyed God, obeyed the Creator, and built the boat to save the people from the flood. But his son refused, and his wife also refused. Okay, so here you have a case where there is a disagreement, and the husband is following one path, and the wife and the son is following a different path. Okay, now if we move to Abraham, did Abraham have any wives?
Yes, two wives.
Yes, right. Did they play an important role in history at the time of Abraham?
Yes.
Sarah and Hajar. Hajar was Ismail's mother, and Sarah was Ishaq's mother. So Jewish and Muslims' path began from these children.
Very good. Okay, so we have the role of motherhood. Okay, and we also, as part of that motherhood, protecting the babies that and bringing up the babies that then became prophets themselves, and from them, great many tribes and important people in religious history, in Abrahamic history, came forth. So here we have some interesting positive portrayals of women who happen to be playing the role of a wife and mother to a prophet. In this case, the great prophet Abraham, who is considered the father of the prophets in terms of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Okay, what about Moses? Did Moses have a wife?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Moses has a wife, son of Jacob, right?
Yes, exactly. And the wife played a very interesting role in choosing Moses as her husband. Okay, the Quran has a story about this, and so we see the role of agency, the role of choice, the role of having power. Okay, decision-making power. A lot of times in human history, there was equality between men and women, and the choice of husband or wife came from men and women. But in other parts of human history or other human societies, okay, a husband is chosen for the wife or the daughter. Okay, the choice is not made by the female, by the girl, by the future wife, or she plays a very small role. But in the case of Moses, it's very clear there was a clear choice being made by the person who eventually became the wife of Moses. Now, if we move forward, who is the only woman in the Quran that is actually mentioned by name? Her name is
Maryam.
Maryam. Yes. Okay. And there has been some interesting scholarship written about this. Maryam, the only woman in history who never had a husband, is given a lot of importance in the Quran. An entire surah, entire chapter is named after her, and some very important lessons are given so that we can learn from the example of Maryam. And part of that is her perseverance and her willingness to stay committed to her Creator, to Allah, no matter how many difficulties she faced. Okay. And then when we come to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his first wife, as we know, was Khadija, somebody who was older than him, somebody who was his boss, somebody who was richer than him, and more experienced in business. And she protected him and she supported him from the earliest part of his prophethood. So it's very important to understand that when we teach history to our children, we make it clear that there have been good and bad men in history, and there have been women who played roles that may have been obedient to the Creator or disobedient. There's all kinds of variety. And it's not about being a man or woman. Making good choices, making bad choices is a human condition. It applies to all men and women. So if we limit temptation or negative behavior to women, and good behavior is all about being a man, this is a complete misunderstanding of the human condition and is a disservice. We are distorting history. We are making misinformation about reality when that occurs. And that can be, unfortunately, an excuse for later on, or as a child grows up with wrong ideas, then they don't have a problem with mistreating women or abusing women or putting them down or thinking that men are better than women. And so one of the unfortunate things, not just in Jewish and Christian traditions, but in the Muslim tradition, there are a number of supposedly things said by the Prophet that show a negative thing about women. Like supposedly the Prophet said that most of the people in heaven are men and most of the people in hell are women. This is a made-up tradition. The Prophet never said it, but it's very common, especially among Arab men. They like to mention this alleged saying of the Prophet, which was never said by the Prophet, peace be upon him. Okay, so if you agree with me that our knowledge should be used to make improvement, to be better. So in Arabic there and in the Quran there is the concept of itqan and ihsan, excellence and improvement. If we try to share what we know in order to reach excellence and improvement, then we need to ask a lot of questions. And one of the main questions that I like to ask myself and my professors, and when I am thinking about something, my question is, what is the problem? Okay. If there is no problem, or if things are going okay, then there's not so much motivation to learn about a particular subject, or it's not the same. Whereas if we understand what is the problem or what are the problems, then things start to make a lot more sense. Okay. So for example, if you're in economics, I don't know if any of you have taken an economics course, but many universities, they offer a course, they call it a course on money, or a course on banking, or a course on money and banking. Now this course may be relevant or irrelevant depending on the course. But before I took this course, I was asking, what's the problem? Why are we studying money, or why are we studying banking? At that time, it was not clear to me. And so it seemed like a very dry topic, dry subject. I was not interested in it. But later I learned that, unfortunately, one of the main problems with money is that it can have a big effect on our life if we do not treat it properly. If we do not learn how to save, if we do not learn how to spend wisely, if we do not learn how to think about money properly, then it can destroy our lives or make us miserable, right? Or make us unsuccessful, including becoming poor. Okay? So some people think that money is something that we should try to get as much as possible. And you ask some people, especially when I was growing up in the United States, so what do you want in life? Oh, I want a big house. I want a nice car. I want lots of money so I can have fun and take vacations. Okay. So money becomes an object in and of itself. It becomes something that you just really want to get as much as possible because it is so valuable and important. Now, later on in life and through other courses, we realize that money is just a tool, right? It's not the tool that we want, it's what the tool will get us, okay? So having millions of dollars in the bank doesn't help me or anybody else. What I do with it is the real question, okay? Do I spend it on myself and waste it and just buy things that I end up eating or I end up using and then throwing away or keeping to myself? That's one way to spend my money. Another way to spend my money is to spend it on education, to help other people, to make the world a better place. And then this can give me spiritual satisfaction. It can give me emotional satisfaction. It can help me achieve better social goals, better political goals, better economic goals. So you see, then it is an improvement when we start to conceive of money as a tool, and this tool can be used to do good things. Now, unfortunately, some men are brought up in this world to think of women as a tool, okay? They don't value women as human beings that form a key part of society. Their perception, unfortunately, in some cases, is that a woman is just a way to get kids. She's not valuable. What's valuable are the kids. Or they value a woman as a servant. She cleans the house, she cooks, she serves the guests. So this conception of women as just an object rather than a subject, as something to be used rather than a human being that is valued as much as any other human being, these different conceptions are competing with each other and causing a lot of tension and conflict in the world. And this has happened throughout human history, okay? And I'll give you a small example of that. In Arab culture, until today, okay, a lot of times to have respect to somebody, you don't call them by their name, okay? So I have an uncle, his name is Muhammad. I don't call him Muhammad. I call him Abu Umar, the father of Umar. In many Arab cultures until today, Arab Muslim and Arab Christian cultures and Arab Jewish culture, okay, you call a man as the father of, and then you mention the name of their eldest son. So it could be Abu Ali, it could be Abu Saleh, it could be Abu Mahmoud, whatever the name of his eldest son. So you call him the father of that eldest son. This is a common tradition. And the mom is referred to as the mother of that eldest son. We don't call her by her name. We call her as Muhammad or Saleh or Dawood. You see, the mother of the eldest son. Now, what is going on with this tradition? What does this indicate, or what was the conception of this social practice? As we learn from history, for Arab tribal culture, traditional Arab tribal culture that the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Prophet Muhammad grew up in, okay, but a lot of the Middle East and a lot of parts of the world, they grow up in tribal cultures. The most valuable thing was not your house, not your car, not your camel, not your cows. The most valuable thing in your life was your son, particularly the oldest son. Okay? This was the most valuable thing you owned. So the tradition became to call a person by the most valuable person in the family, and the most valuable person in the family was the eldest son. So the father is referred to that way, and the mother is also referred to in that way. Now, there were exceptions. If you don't have a son, you were called as the father of the oldest female in the family, but that was the exception. And there was a continuous, and there continues to be an effort on the part of many families, especially Arab families. They have to have a son. They want to have a son. They are so intent on having a son, and sometimes they are so upset when their first child or second or third is a daughter. Okay, it doesn't, having a daughter doesn't make them as happy as having a son. And these are Muslims, Christians, Jews, all kinds of people affected by traditional Middle Eastern culture. Now, why would I mention this? Because this is only one tiny example of how the value of women from the beginning is less than the value of men. And children pick up on that, and then they perpetuate this kind of imbalanced thinking between men and women. Now, let's talk about a different culture. In some cultures, when a woman gets married, she changes her name. She changes her family name. Did any of you know of anybody in your family or your friends when the wife, when she got married, she changed her family name? She changed her last name? Did it happen?
Yes, in Thailand,
Does it
I
happen?
myself,
Yes.
yes, I myself, I changed my surname to my husband name.
Okay, so it happened in Thailand.
Yeah, it's
Ruqya?
like it's like in Malaysia, not like it's Benti, but in Thailand, if we change it, it's the what it called the Lekon rule. To if we have to have right to conquer the treasurer that and that if we don't have the surname, it's difficult. The surname is difficult. Doctor, just now, sorry, I mentioned wrong about Nabi Musa's wife. His father-in-law Nabi Shu'ib, right? I mentioned wrong. It's Nabi Yaqub just now. Sorry.
Yes. And Evans, you are saying in
This
Zimbabwe,
is
women change their family name. Ruqya,
Yeah, sure.
yes.
yeah. This is randomly practiced in Bangladesh also, and our one former Prime Minister Begum Khalida Zia, and her husband name was Ziaur Rahman, and then her name was changed Khaleda Zia, and that Zia is taken from her husband's name.
Very interesting. Thank you, Ruqya. Mac, you had raised your hand.
This happens all over Europe, but what's interesting, people don't realize this actually meant in the past that woman was just a property, and this changing last name was a signifier of owner changing. But I'm curious about those voices from like South Asia. If I'm surprised, for instance, Bangladesh, that you guys changed name. Is this some? Did it come from some colonial imposition of Western law? Like Sister Ruqya, I think you like. Do you know something about it?
No, actually, like that. I don't know clearly that how this practice began, but this is practicing in our country at present.
Okay. Thank you.
So you
In
see,
Thailand, it's a law. It's a law. If
it's
we
a
have
law.
to in Thailand, it's a law that we have to if we want to conquer what it called to have right in a treasurer from from our husband, we have to have the right the what it called his surname. So if but in my part in southern Thailand, we can use Islamic law. So we cannot change our surname is also we can get that one. But if come to the Kirk of Thai Kirk, we cannot use that we should have the license for married license according to government. So our surname we have to change to the husband. Yeah.
Thank you, Saliha. Natalie?
Yes, I just want to mention that traditionally in Russia, we do change our surname once we get married. But as I married in Khaliji country, here we don't have this, so I'm still keeping my lovely surname, and nobody's forcing me to change it. So I'm proudly daughter of my father forever, and I'm happy about this. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Natalie. What about your experience, Niara?
I changed my surname and then I got divorced and I had to rechange my name to my father's surname. So it's useless to change our surnames. We do not have to do it, as to my mind.
Indeed. So this is fascinating, right? We're talking about a social practice, okay? So when a man and a woman get married, physically their body doesn't change, but socially there are changes, and the changes differ from one society to another. So in Arab tribal culture, the expectation in the past was for a woman to get married, to have kids. That was the most important thing, to produce particularly more men for the tribe, because the tribe needed men to protect itself and to be able to get resources. If you look at ancient Greek culture, right, very long ago, a lot of Europeans and North Americans, they trace their civilization back to ancient Greek civilization, whether it is Athens or Sparta or other parts. So in ancient Greek law, in ancient Greek culture, as Mac was pointing out, a woman was property, okay? So first she's the property of her father, then she's the property of her husband. And so to identify that property, the naming was, if you are a daughter, your name goes through your father. And then if you're a wife, your name goes through your husband. And so this has affected a lot of societies and a lot of cultures. And sometimes that effect was transferred through colonialism, okay? It's a very interesting social practice that has some assumptions, historical assumptions underlying it. But as many of you are pointing out, women do not need to do this to be alive, to be successful, to be good mothers, to be good wives. It has nothing to do with what you actually do and how productive you actually are. But it's a social convention that came into law. So part of what we try to think about when it comes to Islam and gender issues is, are the laws supporting men and women and helping them become better people? Or are the laws containing things that don't make sense or actually hindrances to the progress of men and women? So, for example, in many societies, and again, I go back to Arab societies, my own background is from Iraq, which is a traditional Arab society, but it also has a big Kurdish minority and Turkish minority and Persian minority and some ancient Christian minorities. So in Arab culture, you notice that not only is there a value on the eldest son, but also it is an expectation when children are brought up from a young age. Women are groomed or trained, or to a large extent, not everybody, of course, but the notion is that women are there to serve the men in that culture, serving the father, serving the brother, serving their own sons. So there's this notion of a service role, not control, but service. Whereas young men are constantly taught or being told or groomed or encouraged to take on leadership, to be in a decision-making role, okay? So again, we're talking about social conventions that then gets transferred into law, okay? So in many Arab countries, and sometimes this law still is there, in many Arab Muslim countries, a woman cannot travel, okay? She has a passport. A woman cannot get a passport unless her father or husband agrees, number one. And then she cannot travel, she cannot use that travel to go to another country unless she gets permission from her husband or father. So there has to be a male, it's a man who has the decision-making power over an important aspect of a woman's life. Okay? Again, this is something that developed in Arab culture and got transferred into law and got even transferred into Islamic law. And we can have discussions about that. Is Islamic law supporting men and women to both develop and have peace and harmony? Or have there been so-called Islamic laws made or laws made in Muslim countries that are reinforcing an imbalance, a relationship of more power to men and less power to women? And this is indicative through social practices. So we talked about naming conventions, and then through the law in terms of, for example, the ability to travel. And then you have, for example, the issue of citizenship. In many Arab countries, and this is not just Arab countries, okay, when a husband and wife get married, if they are the citizens of the same country, then their children get the citizenship, get the passport of that country. What if they are from different countries? In many Arab countries, especially in the Gulf, okay, they do not get the passport of their father if the mother has the passport from a different country. So let's say a Saudi man marries a Pakistani woman. They don't give their sons and daughters Saudi citizenship. They tell them, no, you follow the mother, okay? So the privileges and the legal rights and the decision-making power in some countries like Saudi Arabia is given in many cases to men, and then that gets transferred from one generation to another through the laws regarding citizenship, okay? And in fact, in some countries like Saudi Arabia, they don't allow Saudi men or even Saudi women to marry men or women from particular countries. Like, for example, Pakistan, they don't allow a Saudi man to marry a Pakistani woman. You have to get special permission, and usually they don't give that permission, okay? And same thing with Saudi women, they control the person whom she can marry if it's from a different country. When my sister, who was a US citizen, married a Saudi man who was a Saudi citizen, they had to get special permission in order to get married from the government, from the Saudi government, okay? US government doesn't have to give me permission or anybody permission to get married, but in some Arab Muslim governments, that is still the case, okay? So throughout history, depending on which society you're looking at, there is a lot of imbalance. Yes, Natalie?
This is actually very interesting what you are telling about Saudi. I didn't know these facts, that they are limited in rights, but we have fun facts. Actually, in UAE, if the wife is foreigner and the man is local, kids are getting passport and all the rights. It's fine, but and they actually don't need any permission except one emirate. I know one of my friends, she's from Armenia, and she's married to one local guy from Ajman emirate. And I know that they suffer because he need to get the permission from the sheikh of Ajman to marry her. So because they are not from Ajman, local guys, they are not allowed to marry right away without permission to foreigners. So like 6 emirates is fine, but one is not okay. So it's it's funny. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm glad you pointed out, Sister Natalie, this very interesting observation. Inside the same country, you can have differences between different parts of the country. So again, I use the example of the United States because I have lived here most of my life in the United States. There used to be a law in many states or most states that you cannot marry somebody from a different color, okay, from a different race. The law made it illegal for a white woman to marry a black man or a white man to marry a black woman. It was illegal. It was not allowed. And they call it in English, they call miscegenation law. Okay, I will type this out because it's a strange word. Most people...
Number one, to make the strangest law. I think there is special books, that some states, they have very shocking law on different subjects, shorts or marriage or so we all know that they're funny. So we are not surprised.
That's right. And if you can look some of these up for us on the internet, and we can share them in class to get some enlightenment. But these laws were then later changed in the 60s and 70s, especially as a result of the civil rights movement. But I think the last state to change this law happened in the year 2000. So very recently. Okay. Now people were doing it anyway, regardless of the law. But
Professor,
I mean,
may I ask one question?
yes.
What's the Islamic justification for the reason behind not marrying the different color?
That's a very good question, Ruhiya. So, what is the role of religion, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and so we talk about Islam or Christianity or Judaism. Okay, in Islam, if you look at the Quran never prohibited marriages from different cultures, different religions, different types of backgrounds, different types of colors. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, encouraged marriage from people all over the world. But later on, unfortunately, some Muslim countries or Islamic countries, they adopted laws for different reasons that led to discrimination. Okay, I don't know the history of that. It's not my area, but it's something that some of you can look at and help enlighten us. Why would particularly a Muslim country like Saudi Arabia not allow its men to marry women from a country, for example, like Pakistan? What is the reason? How is it justified Islamically? In American society, which is affected by Christian culture, okay, it's an interesting fact that the most segregated institution in America is the church. So what is segregation? Segregation is keeping white people and black people apart, living in different areas, having different jobs, not marrying each other. This is called segregation, okay? And it was very common in many parts of the United States, particularly in the southern states which had slavery. A black man and a black woman cannot eat in the same restaurant as a white man and a white woman. A black man and a black woman cannot ride in the same bus or the same part of the bus as a white man or a white woman. They could not, in many cases, own property. They could not, they were not allowed to use the same restrooms, the same bathrooms. They were not allowed to go to the same schools. So there's a huge amount of horrible discrimination and racism in American history. And usually it's based on color, okay? But within color, it then based upon gender, with laws deciding who you could marry and who you could not marry. Now you take that further and you say, how can the country, which is considered or might be called the most advanced country on the earth, so the United States has the best technology and the most money. Yes, Natalie.
Yeah, I just wanted, it came to my mind now that in Khadija, I'm talking about UAE now. So here, men, they're actually free to marry anyone, any foreigners. I didn't hear about any specific nation they cannot marry. But UAE females, they cannot marry anyone unless it's UAE national. And like 78% of UAE nationals now marrying foreigners. And all the females, they are not married and they are not allowed to marry foreigners, and there is no enough men. And most of them are not married. And even the government is encouraging local couples to marry. They pay for their marriage. They are granting them house upon marriage and many things. Still, it doesn't work. And many females suffering. And even some of them, they are engaged with foreign men and they have kids. These kids cannot be UAE nationals. And there was a case like few years ago. There was like across the country about 50 females who had, I think they married abroad, maybe in Jordan or somewhere with Muslim man, Arab man, but he's not UAE national, okay? They have kids, and after maybe these kids already 30, 40 years old, and they were granted for citizenship in UAE. So still, you know, we are in 2022, still this is happening in, like, let's say, number one Arab country. Yes, they are ahead of the whole world as they see themselves, but still there is such injustice for local women, where they have no chance to get their personal life due to this social injustice, as I can.
Natalie, they might be hating you for stealing men.
Or, you can't imagine.
That
No
was a
joke.
joke.
It's no joke. I'm telling you, even sometimes, most of the time, when I'm coming to area where is local woman, or I'm flying in the aircraft and they're sitting next, they don't even say salam back if I'm saying salam alaikum. There is so much hate against us here. If even I used to run a company here, and once I'm coming to the area for administration, it's always local females working there in administration, and they did so many problems and obstacles for me in running my company, just because I'm Russian, I'm Muslim, and astaghfirullah, if they know my husband is local, it's, you know, hate forever, and they are ready to poison me right away. So yes, I'm hiding most of the time at home.
Persona non grata for them.
Yes, it's fascinating, and it's also sad, and it's also very upsetting that so much injustice can continue, even though we are in such an advanced level of technology and of progress, and yet still we have this kind of injustice going on. Ganiyu, in your country, what is the situation? Brother Ganiyu? Okay. If we look at society, we can look at how social ideas or ideas from society affect the law, and also how they affect the economy, how they affect the political system, how they affect the family, how they affect education, how they affect sports. So let's talk about sports. Okay. Are sports something that are only for men or only for women or both, or what is going on? Okay. If you are watching the Olympics now, right, which are taking place in China, the Winter Olympics, okay, you will see that in many sports, or almost all the sports, there are men and there are women. In the past, this was not always the case, okay? And especially in the Western tradition, sports was considered a male activity. So the people participating, the teams, the people doing the sport were usually men, and the people watching were usually men. And the people who own the teams and the people who provide money tended to be men. So sports.
This
Yeah.
is, I think, a Greek tradition, and yes, because, and Rome tradition, and ancient times, it was specifically a man issue, right?
Yes. And you see that paralleled in terms of war, in terms of armies, right? Historically, especially in the West, armies were made up of men. Men fought against men. It was men leading the armies. It was men deciding what the army will do. Politicians who were men were sending other men into war. So whether it's sports or the military, traditionally, especially in the West, it was dominated by men. Okay. Now, we can look at that history and we can ask a number of questions. What is the kind of context where men tend to be dominant, or it's only men, or mostly men? And then how does that change, and why does that change? Okay. Specifically, we are coming from a background where we are talking about Islam and gender issues. So from a Muslim perspective, in both theory and practice, we can ask, what is Islam saying and what are Muslims doing? Again, as I had emphasized, Islam is a set of ideas, and they are found in primarily the Holy Quran and then the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad. And then Muslims are the ones who are supposed to be following Islam, implementing Islam, putting Islam into practice. But Muslims are not perfect. They are human beings, right? So sometimes they follow the principles of Islam very well, and sometimes they don't. So we always separate with any religion between the ideas of the religion, between the teachings of the religion, and then the practice of the people following the religion. And the practice is never perfectly following the religion, and it can change from one society to another and one time to another. So in the military, if you look at early Muslim history, what was happening with men and women? A lot of people hide the fact, or unfortunately don't mention or are unaware of the fact that when the Prophet was fighting, when the Prophet Muhammad was involved in wars, when there were battles taking place in the beginning of Muslim history, were there women in the military? Were there women warriors and fighters? Who knows the answer to this question?
That's only Israeli story for specific female army. I think there is no any female army in any other country.
Okay.
Only just separate females maybe. In Russia, yes, we have ladies who are serving in army, but it's exception, not a rule.
Okay, very good point. So in many armies, it was all men. But as it turns out, we know for a fact that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in his own army, there were women. There were women soldiers. There were women who provided the food. There were women who took care of the people who were injured. But it is a fact that there were women warriors, women soldiers in the Prophet's army. Okay? And these are women who are companions, who are Muslim, and who are defending the Prophet with their swords, with their fighting skills in the early battles of the Muslim community. Now, later on, this changed, where they got rid of the women during the time of the Umayyads and the Abbasids. And then throughout different periods and societies, you probably did not see as many women involved, except in kind of support roles. And then in the modern world, as Natalie, you were pointing out, different countries have taken different decisions. So, as you said, in the Russian army, you will see women. The United States did not allow women in its military until they changed the rules in the past 50 years, where they were deciding now to allow women, not everywhere, but to allow women to join the military, the army, the Air Force, the Navy. So again, a lot of this changes over time. Ruhiya.
Professor, in Bangladesh, like in my country, women can join army or military, but they must be unmarried. Okay, no married women or married girl can join army or military or air force. So I don't know why this is the logic. And another thing is Islam, or do Islam allow to women to join in defense of a country, defense team of a country?
Excellent points, Sister Ruhiya. Okay, so either a country can say no women or can allow women, but certain restrictions, like they have to be unmarried. Okay, and this is different from one country to another. If you look at Islam, whether in theory or in practice, there's nothing in Islam that prevents women from joining the military. or joining any other profession or occupation or job. Nothing in Islam prevents women from anything in terms of these things. And so, but in practice, most Muslim countries that I know of, either they don't allow women in the military or just very limited roles. Now that's changing over time, but that tends to be the case. And when you ask them, you know, are you Muslim? Yes. Does your country allow women in the military? No, or very limited. Why? Sometimes they claim it is because of Islam. And then you ask them, where in Islam is it saying women cannot join? So then they use or they interpret certain verses and certain practice of the Prophet to make it look like women are not allowed. So they talk about that a woman can get hurt or tortured or abused different than men. And they talk about the notion or the idea that they claim women are weaker, or they talk about the idea that the job of women is to take care of the kids. If she's not taking care of the children, then the family will get destroyed. So they use these kind of indirect arguments to prevent women. But all of these arguments, in my opinion, and in terms of the scholars we are studying, they do not make any sense. They're not valid. They're not based upon research, and they are in contradiction with the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, it's also fascinating to know that in terms of psychological research, men tend to be, you know, the brain has two parts. There's a right brain and a left brain. Men tend to focus on the right brain. Women use both sides of the brain. So in many ways, at least psychologically, women actually have an advantage. And they are therefore in a position to contribute some very interesting things to any job that they are a part of or any institution that cannot always be contributed by men because of the biological advantage that women have. So when you talk to many Muslims, or yes, Sister Natalie.
But talking about military, I think we have to consider that not many females really wants to go to army. I don't know much. I think it's not something interesting for them.
Yes, that's true. I mean, many women choose not to enter into the military or some other professions. But if it's a personal choice, then there's no issue there. But if the institution itself is not welcoming, then we have an issue, you see. So if an institution, let's say a university, you know, in the United States, universities in the past did not allow women. They prevented women from studying in the university. And this was true also in some parts of Europe. It wasn't until, you know, within the past 100 years or 200 years that universities started allowing women to study. Whereas from my knowledge, in most Muslim universities or Islamic universities, women were allowed to join from the beginning, not necessarily everything and every field, but women were students in universities from early on in Islamic history until today. So again, a society might consider itself civilized and advanced and very progressive, but in fact has a lot of injustice against women. And societies that others consider backward or barbaric or regressive or undeveloped actually have given women and provided women with more opportunities and more choices than the so-called developed societies. So we see these contradictions. Yes, Brother Ganiyu.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
I think many countries have they've taken women as part of their military. Most countries in the world, because military nowadays is not about power again. It also includes intelligence gathering, use of sophisticated equipment, even required intelligence. So women are also used in that area. I know of Nigeria, there are many women in the military that they even rank as much as the post of Major General. They are women. Even some are in the war front, and they will be there assisting the men in where they can provide intelligence. So I think women can also serve in the military. So, Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Brother Ganiyu. Now, when you talk to some Muslims, especially Muslims who can be labeled or are considered more extreme, more radical, more fundamentalist, whatever term may be used, especially the terrorist groups, they have their own ideas about women. So you have most Muslims, most believers are what are called moderates, not extreme. The people on the extreme also have their own ideas, and sometimes there is a conflict. So in countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran, where there are a lot of restrictions on women, sometimes these restrictions are claimed to be based upon Islam, or they are justified or excused based upon so-called Islamic principles or certain considerations for women. And so in Saudi Arabia, up until a few years ago, women were not allowed to drive. Well, let me clarify that. They were not given a driver's license, okay? If they had a driver's license from a different country, then that was legal. But if a Saudi Arabian woman wanted to get a Saudi Arabian driver's license, she was not allowed until this law was changed a few years ago. And so, and when you ask their religious scholars, they would say, of course, this Islam says women cannot drive. And you would ask them, where does this come from? Did the Prophet prohibit it? Does the Quran prohibit it? They say, well, women, they come up with excuses. So they would say women are more emotional, or they would say that women are not as capable of handling a car breakdown, or they are less able to control a car than men, or they will be put in a situation where bad men will take advantage of them. So they are using certain social problems as of a justification to put more restrictions specifically on women. These alleged excuses, first of all, are not based on any research. It's not based on the facts. It's not based on reality. It's based on assumptions or assertions, okay? An assumption is something that you say is going to happen, but you don't have proof. It's just an opinion, a thought, okay? And then furthermore, even if this puts women in a difficult situation, you can always come up with solutions. So every country that allows women to drive, sure, there can be an issue with some men trying to take advantage of the women, but there are laws that deal with that. And why would they say that women are more emotional than men? This is a Western concept that was proven wrong a long time ago, and yet some Muslim scholars, unfortunately, still believe in this. And then the assumption is that somehow emotion is a bad thing or a problem. So they problematize something and ascribe it to women, and then use that to justify injustice towards women. If we want to be a successful and a society that is constantly improving, we have to recognize that gender relations need to be based on a God-given set of circumstances where we, both men and women, have been put on earth, and both men and women will be held responsible for what they do, and both men and women should have no restrictions on whatever they want to do, and the criteria should be something that is positive versus something that is negative, rather than something that is male versus something that is female. So if we want to decide whether something should be allowed or not, it should not be based upon gender. It should be based upon its own criteria for being good for being bad. So, for example, countries need people to drive trucks. Okay, so fine. Anybody who wants to drive a truck, let them drive a truck. In some countries, especially, for example, traditional Iraqi society, even though legally a woman can drive a truck, it's considered shameful or a problem. And usually conservative families, especially, they will not allow their daughter to become a truck driver. So the law says she can be a truck driver and get a license, but her family or the people in her society discourage her or even prevent her. Why is that? Somehow there's some idea that things are okay for women and other things are not. It has nothing to do with ability in reality, and it has nothing to do with the biology of women. It's just assumptions about what is honorable and what is less honorable, or what is considered socially to be a source of pride versus socially to be a source of rejection or dishonor. And here we come to this issue of honor. Okay, every society has some idea, some principles for this thing we call honor. Okay, I will write this word down so everybody knows what I'm talking about. Honor. Okay, now different people might have a different understanding of what we are talking about when we say honor, but every society, every group of people considers some behaviors as honorable, as something that is associated with honor, and some things as dishonorable. Or we could use the word dignity. Okay, some things are considered dignified, and some things that are considered undignified. Okay, so for example, collecting garbage or cleaning the sewage system, cleaning the toilet. Okay, do we need human beings to clean our toilets? Of course.
Absolutely.
Yes, Natalie.
Absolutely, we need.
Right? It is a human need from the beginning of humanity until the end of humanity. Now, is it okay? Is it acceptable for somebody to work as a toilet cleaner?
I think most of the countries, they are providing a very rich social package for people who are ready to work with this, but because they know that they are losing something in the attitude of society to them. So people who are in need of money, they can go for it due to some social situation, I think.
So it's very interesting when we talk about the social context. Okay, legally, anybody in every country or most countries can work as a toilet cleaner, younger, old, man or woman, local or foreigner. But in reality, okay, can a person say it's okay for my father to work as a toilet cleaner? It's okay for my mother to work as a toilet cleaner. It's okay for my sister to work as a toilet cleaner. It's okay for my brother to work as a toilet cleaner. It's okay for my daughter to work as a toilet cleaner. It's okay for my son to work as a toilet cleaner. In some contexts, okay, this is considered to be a not so good profession, or they call a dirty profession, or a dishonorable profession. Okay. Yes, you are allowed to do it by the law, and the government allows you to do it, but it is considered in many families as something nasty, something unacceptable. If you are dying and you have no food and it is the only way to stay alive, maybe some societies will say, okay, fine. But in general, if a person can find a more respectable profession or a more honorable profession, they will push you against being a toilet cleaner. And so here we start using these terms like honorable, respectable, dignified. These are all social constructions. What do I mean by social construction? In other words, we human beings made it up. It's not coming from God. It's not coming from nature. It is us. We human beings, society, we say that there is a category called dignified, honorable, acceptable, and then we put some things in that category, and then we create another category or set of categories: unacceptable, undignified, dishonorable, and we put things in that category, such as toilet cleaning. Okay, it is very important. No society can live without toilet cleaning. It's absolutely a part of human society, but it is considered down or beneath or too dirty or unacceptable. And then you see this idea in looked at differently in different parts of society. Okay, so you look at the profession of prostitution. Okay, every society in every part of history has prostitution. Okay, people paying money for sex outside of marriage. Okay, almost every society considers prostitution, even if sometimes it is legal, as dishonorable, undignified, a dirty profession. And because most of the people providing the service are women, so then society looks negatively at any woman who is participating in this job or who they think might be participating in this job. So for a lot of women, it has to be hidden, it has to be secret. And unfortunately, a lot of women in this profession get abused, get killed, get hurt. And what a lot of people don't are not aware of is most of the time in most of the world, the people controlling this profession are men. So the prostitutes may be women, mostly women, but the people in charge are men. And therefore, society is contradictory. It focuses on the woman who may be engaging in this job, but it doesn't focus so much on the men controlling them. And a lot of these women, or in some cases, most of them, are forced into it by men, by criminal gangs who kidnap girls, who kidnap women, and force them to become sex workers and sex slaves. So something that is associated with gender, when it doesn't have to be, is then considered negative, and then any woman that does it or that they think maybe might be doing it is then treated very badly or treated negatively or not allowed to participate in society, or they keep away from her. This is a big problem everywhere in the world, because one of the results is that the victim is blamed for the crime, for the offense. Most women who are prostitutes, and most men, they don't want to be prostitutes. They don't want that job. And they realize it is haram, it is unacceptable, God does not allow it, it is sinful. But most of them are forced to do it by men. And yet when society discusses this, it puts the punishment on the woman. The police catch the woman, not the men who are paying them for the sexual relations. And in the media and in the TV and in books and magazines, it's always promoted, or not promoted, but condemned as something that bad women do. In fact, there used to be laws in the United States against what they called moral imbecility. Imbecile used to be a word that means stupid or idiot, okay? But there used to be a law against somebody who is a moral idiot. What does that mean? It means that they are doing something that is considered socially unacceptable, and that you can be put in jail for it. So this law was used to control young girls. If a father was abusing his daughter, God forbid, or an uncle, and this girl ran away from home, they would not punish the father or the uncle or the neighbor, the man. They would punish the girl under this law that is called moral imbecility, which is defined as doing something stupid that is against the morality, against what a good person does. So it could be running away from home, it could be living on the street, it could be getting involved in prostitution. They blame the girl, who is in most cases a victim. She was hurt, abused, sexually assaulted by her father or stepfather or neighbor or uncle, and then she wants to get away from it, but then she's the one who's punished. So when we look at imbalance in terms of gender relations, and we ask, is there something wrong being done? Yes. Who is doing it? Both men and women are doing it, but then who is getting punished? For some reason, usually it's the woman who's punished. So let's look at Islamic law. Is adultery allowed in Islamic law? No, you cannot have sex with somebody other than your wife or other than your husband. What if it happens? Well, they catch the criminal and punish them. Who is the person they catch? The vast majority of the police, they go after the woman. And then they punish the woman by death, or like with the Taliban, they put her in the ground and throw rocks at her until she dies. What about the man who is just as much a criminal in this act? They don't touch him, they don't prosecute him, they don't judge him, they don't punish him. Maybe in some very, very limited circumstances. And a lot of times in cases of rape, where the woman is completely a victim, they still punish the woman. So here, it's not just society that is being unjust and unequal, it's the law, it's the legal system, it's the government that is being extremely unjust and unequal, and is doing a horrible crime to society. So when we talk about gender relations and when we talk about the law, we can see how sometimes the laws, the legal situation supports men and women, and sometimes it lets the man get away with the crimes and punishes a woman who may be a criminal, but even when she's a victim, she is still punished. And it's very interesting now, more and more countries are starting to realize this huge problem around the world of sex trafficking, usually kidnapping women, although they kidnap men also, I mean, young girls and young boys, mostly young girls, and they sell them to criminal gangs around the world and force them into prostitution, into selling their bodies. And all the money, or most of the money, is going to these criminal gangs who are men. Now, more and more countries, if you go to the airport, you will see signs that sex trafficking is illegal. If you feel you are being forced, please contact the authorities, contact the police. And so now there's more awareness about this issue, but it's still a big issue around the world. So in the past, there used to be physical slavery, where legally, like in the United States, they will buy and sell people from Africa and force them to become slaves. That has become illegal, but there is now around the world a sex trafficking, which is illegal, but it is happening all around the world, and it is affecting millions of women. It is destroying the lives of millions of women. Some men are also kidnapped and forced into these sex rings, but it's mostly women, and it's affecting these poor victims, these poor women, and it's unfortunately not being resolved very quickly. There's not enough interest, and there's not enough attention paid by society to this problem. And sometimes the woman herself, even if she tries to run away, people in society sometimes refuse to help her. They say, "Oh, you're just a prostitute. We don't help prostitutes." Not realizing that she's a victim, that she is being abused and being destroyed by criminal men and criminal gains. Any questions about the course so far, about the books, about the research paper, about the timeline?
Yeah, on my case, I couldn't download the required books, like the books that you said we're supposed to read. I couldn't access and download them.
Okay, we can help you through Sister Benazir. So contact me later on, and we'll see to resolve it. Thank you, Evans. Yes, Natalie.
Yes, I just wondering if there will be the recording of this lecture videos in the LMS, because I was trying to find our previous lecture and I couldn't find it in the system. So will we find it later on?
Thank you, Natalie, for bringing that up. Yes, I am sending the files to Sister Benazir, and she is working very hard to put them in the LMS. So hopefully they will be provided soon. And thank you for that reminder.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other question about?
Assalamualaikum, Doctor. Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Concerning that you give us to find a famous woman, I think I'm just like Rohia last time that I could not find, but one person that he what it called fight for hijab. Can we consider as this is a gender issue also?
Yes.
For hijab in Thailand, he is a former lecturer, so I think this can be considered also, because it's difficult to find women, Muslim women, in minority in such my country.
Yes.
So this can consider, yeah, yes, yeah.
Yes, and contact me directly on email and WhatsApp so we can finalize this. Thank you, Sister Saliha, for bringing that up. Exactly. Good. Other question or concerns so far? Okay, while you're thinking about this, let's talk about this some remaining issues that have to do with education, with teaching. For those of you who are students, you know that students and teachers and schools are part of an institution in every society which involves the transfer of knowledge, which involves sharing information, okay, which is critical and essential in every society. And it's become more complicated as time passes and as technology is becoming more and more part of our lives. But interestingly enough, or strangely enough, while our technology is advancing, education around the world, almost everywhere, is failing, is a failure. Most people going to school and taking classes and spending time listening to teachers and professors and lecturers are wasting their time. Most of what is being done in our schools is useless or nonsense or unhelpful or of very little value. So whether it is advanced countries or developing countries, the education systems have not achieved their goals. People are getting diplomas. People are graduating. People are getting degrees. Yes, they are getting pieces of paper with their name on them that says you have achieved a certain level of education. But it is really unfortunate that this is like a big illusion, because in reality, even though people are going through the system of education, very little is being learned. And what is being taught, a lot of it, some of it is useful, that's true. Like you have to know numbers and addition and subtraction and how to use a calculator and multiplication and division. So mathematics, when it is taught, or language, when it is taught, is important. but most of it is not being used and not of benefit, and a lot of times it is forgotten. And this is true for education all over the world. So, no matter how much you get in terms of years of education, a lot of it could have been time and effort spent more productively in other places. You take religious education, for example. Most religious education in schools around the world is very, very low level, very problematic. Sometimes a lot of misinformation is there. And the schools around the world that are controlled by the government are the worst performing schools on earth. The government, for the most part, everywhere in the world, in the very rich countries, the middle and the poor countries, the government has been doing a terrible job of education. And this has affected boys and girls, men and women, but particularly if, for example, a woman wants to be in science and technology and modern subjects like computer science, education, the schools have not been very helpful to them. They have provided some support, but have not been as supportive as they have been to men who want to become engineers and who want to become computer scientists. So education is failing everybody, is failing men and is failing women. It's wasting the time of men and is wasting the time of women. And this has been proven through so much research that has been done. And you get some exceptions, like they say the Singapore education system is doing very well, or maybe in Finland. But those are exceptions, and it's not all subjects. And there's still a lot of waste in terms of time and effort, even in those systems. So why would I bring up this topic of education when we're discussing Islam and gender issues? Well, a lot of societies consider the gender roles being men go get a job and bring income to the family, and women take care of everything else, including education. So what ends up happening is a child goes in the morning to school and then comes back, and they learn very little or not enough, or they don't really understand. So most of the time, in most families, it is the mother, usually, who ends up having to teach the child the material that they did not learn in school or did not learn very well in school. Although the father can do it, and sometimes fathers do get involved in teaching their children how to understand the material from school, but in most societies and most of the time, it is the mother. So now the burden of education, instead of being fulfilled by the school in a good way, in a proper way, in a successful way, is now being put on or as the responsibility of the mother, of the mom. And it is a huge responsibility, and mothers are not able to keep up because there is so much misinformation and nonsense and bad teaching going on in most schools around the world, that the mothers are in a struggle, continuous struggle. And mothers and fathers are really suffering because their children are getting not a very good education, and this not good education is getting worse. So in my parents' generation, education was higher level, and then my generation, it got worse. And then the next generation, it's even becoming more worse. This is, again, an issue for both men and women, for fathers and mothers, but the burden or the expectation is on the mothers to solve this problem. And it is such a huge problem, no mother by herself or set of mothers by themselves can solve it. It exists all over the world, and it involves millions, trillions of dollars and effort and hours and time spent by teachers and students. In order to make this world a better place, we need to make schools a better place. And in order for schools to be a better place, they have to be a better place for both boys and girls, for both men and women. And the ideas we're talking about in this class, these problems we see with gender, should actually be resolved in the family and supported by the school. If bad ideas are being taught in the family, at least the school can correct them. But if the school is also teaching dysfunctional ideas or negative ideas, then the problem just becomes much worse. And this is true for religion, this is true for gender relations, this is true for economics, this is true for political issues. So let me talk about economics. In order to be successful in this world, a human being needs to be able to earn an income, to understand money, to know how to invest, to save for the future, to use the banking system, to know the difference between somebody who is truly caring about your money versus somebody who is lying to you and trying to steal your money or doing hacking or doing a scam or taking your money without giving you anything or giving you something that you don't need or you don't want. So all these ideas about money are very important, but our children are not learning them. The families are not able to teach everything, and the schools are not doing a good job of teaching about economics. And one of the most important things for both men and women, but particularly women, is to be successful in this world, which means to be successful in the job market. To survive today, men and women have to be able to succeed in their job.
We learn these things by our mistakes.
Exactly. That's
Especially
very true.
financially. All this we first we fail, and then from this bloody fails we learn a lot. So yes, unfortunately, really, life, nobody teaches life at school, which is very sad.
It's very, very sad. So we expect for school to teach us about life, about how to succeed in life, about how to make our lives better, which means getting a job, keeping a job, succeeding at a job, learning how to get a better job. School is not teaching us this. And if you don't learn it from your family or from some other source, then it's very hard. And it's even harder when it comes to men versus women, because at least men in general are given more opportunities and are given more support, whereas women are not getting as much support in terms of joining the job market, staying in the job market, and getting a better job. Okay, of course, there are exceptions everywhere. Now, why should we care? Okay, why do we make a big deal out of work or income or these issues of material matters? Well, as we know, human beings need to be able to survive so that they can become better citizens, better Muslims, better neighbors. But to survive, you have to understand the market. You have to be successful with your job. You have to know how to use money properly and keep it away from the thieves and the liars and to put it in the right place. And if most people don't know this, and especially women are taught this less than men, then this is a huge problem for all societies. Okay.
But somebody's gaining something from this. Otherwise, uh, the system would be arranged in the way that we learned it. So actually, maybe society or a higher part of society are gaining from our mistakes.
Indeed, I mean, there are a number of issues involved. So, for example, in many families, I'm not saying every family, but in many families, they put or they encourage or they decide to put their sons and daughters in school. So both are in school. But there is an attitude or a situation where the family is encouraging the son more, and the neighbors are encouraging the males more, and society is encouraging the boys more, because the expectation is that ultimately he really needs to get a job, but she is not that important for her because she'll just get married and her husband will support her. A very good question from Mac. Is IKI a failing or a successful educational institution? This is a very important question and a very good question, because it is an institution that is asking us for time and effort, okay? And time and effort are valuable. And we should not put our time and effort in something that's failing. We should put it into something that is succeeding. So I would say that from my own perspective, its successes so far are more than its failures. But I don't know. I don't have the research to really answer that question properly. It has succeeded. IKI has succeeded in reaching a lot of students because of the online format. So that's good. But a lot of students don't have access to the internet, or the internet is very weak, or it's a problem. So we're failing to reach those students. What about the students who don't speak English? I'm happy that some courses are in Russian, but some students know English. That's good. Some know Russian. What about the students who don't know English and don't know Russian? How are we serving those people? We are not. Okay. And so there's a lot of questions and concerns about every educational institution, including this one, IKI, and including others. What I have been trying to do with IKI, and they have been very helpful, is to provide more support to every student. So yes, the classes and the technology, yes, and the information, yes, and the books, yes, that's important. But even more, to provide money for research papers, to provide money for travel, to provide money to go visit scholars. I would love to go visit all of you in your countries, or you come to visit me, or both of us come to visit each other somewhere, somehow, some way. I think that's very valuable. And hopefully IKI will become more involved in supporting these different types of activities. And hopefully IKI, we are working together to provide a way to assess. So not just find out if the student is succeeding or failing, but IKI itself. We have to have some kind of test, some kind of research to see where IKI is doing a good job and where it is in need of improvement. So thank you so much, Mac, for this. Now, if we come from the Islamic perspective, Islam asks us to ask ourselves, are we knowledgeable about Islam? Do we know what is necessary? There are some basics everyone should know. And if we don't know it, we should learn it. And then after the basics, what do we need to know? We need to be able to succeed in the modern world economically, politically, socially, psychologically, spiritually. And this requires knowledge. This requires information. And if we don't have it, we need to go find it and seek it. That's why I encourage you to ask me questions. And if there's a question I cannot answer, hopefully I can help you and guide you or support you in finding a source for those answers. Yes, Mac.
I have one more question. Does IKI have a vision for a successful student? Like what a graduate of IKI supposed to be equipped with or able to do? Do you have some kind of vision behind the curriculum? And thank you.
Very good question, and this is very important. So in the discussions between the IKI teachers, yes, we have some kind of vision, and the vision ultimately is for every one of you to be able to teach these subjects to other people, okay? So once you've reached a level where you can take the knowledge you've learned and share it with others and become IKI professors yourself, then this will be the sign of success and ultimately will help everybody achieve the goals of IKI. Is it easy? No. Is it cheap? No. Yes, Natalie.
I think that each of us as a student came here with a specific idea why we need to learn this. I think the idea of perfect IKI students cannot be one idea because uh, we all doing our job in different fields, but we are gaining here our general like level. We are trying to be level up in our religion science and the understanding thing what's going on in the Muslim world. Just for me personally, I'm doing now my postgraduate in in social psychology, and I also do some. I have qualification in gender coaching and sexology. So I'm planning to be a psychologist, like doing the consultation. But what I do, I'm a member of association in Russia for doing psychological counseling for Muslims. So for me, IKI is just helping me to improve my to give me the better understanding of Muslim people, Muslim society, and to be more qualified in my profession, not just psychologist, but specifically to help Muslim people. So I think each of us, we are gaining something specific for our field. So I think our success is depend on us, and absolutely I see that we can gain a lot, but each of us taking something they need from IKI. This is how I see it.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing both Natalie and Mac. Yes, you had.
That was a great point, Natalie. I'm just curious about other students if they would be willing to share their motivation behind joining this institution and what their expectations are. If you're willing, you don't have to, but it would be nice to. It's interesting, I think.
Yes.
Definitely.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am as a senior student. This is my third semester. Alhamdulillah, I learn a lot. And I am enjoying now in Thailand. It's 2 p.m. 2 a.m. Actually, yes. Alhamdulillah, tonight I can bear to be here. Last time I oversleep. Yeah, Alhamdulillah, like Natalie said just now, we learn a lot and we can share our Islamic thought. That for me, I got 4 paper already. Alhamdulillah, the paper from on every course that we can develop to public in any journal. And for me, I really got benefits from IKI, YouTube, books, that, and I can contribute to my student, my colleague, and also my NGO. Alhamdulillah. So for Natalie, inshallah, I will invite you to give me a workshop on Islamic counseling because we in Thailand we what it call perform this and we try to invite all of you to join us. I think that is the good thing for us as a Muslim Ummah. We can share, like our doctor, beloved doctor, he can really help us very much. We open mind. We can what it can increase our knowledge and we can share among us. Alhamdulillah, that is the good of COVID. We can share on internet around the world as our brother and sister in Islam. Alhamdulillah, this is the rizki minallah for our knowledge. I think one dua that I always read in the morning after subhi, Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'an wa rizqan tayyiban wa amalan mutaqabbalan. I think I always read this dua, and Allah tells me with the dua, this dua. So many knowledge, every book, every channel that we go, we can gain the knowledge. Now I think I swim. I am swimming in the sea of the knowledge of Allah. Yeah, Alhamdulillah, Jazakumullahu khairan, Jazakallahu khairan, Dr. Umar. I learned a lot from your class.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Sister Natalie?
Yes, I just want to thank Soliha for good words, and I want to sympathize her because last semester I spent in Thailand for like I was there for about 5 months, and I do understand.
MashaAllah.
I do understand because all my classes last semester start like 10, 11 p.m. and I was awake till 3, 4 a.m. And it's for me, I'm an early bird, so I usually wake up 5 o'clock and I don't sleep. It was a real suffer. So I think most of the Muslim, they are supposed to be early bird with our Fajr, but it's really difficult. So I do sympathize. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for your responses, and we look forward to everybody to providing their response. Before we finish class today, I want to remind you for next week, please read the scholar Al-Faruqi. Okay, we will be discussing him next week, and also your first assignment, assignment 1, and I will write this here, and I will send it also in the WhatsApp group. I want you in one page, okay, for assignment 1. I want you in one page to just answer this question, and the question is, what are the most important gender issues for me? Okay. There's no right or wrong answer to this question. I just want to see what is in your experience, in your life, in your childhood, in your understanding, in your way of looking at the world. What do you think are the most important gender issues? Okay. This is not something I want you to do research or to look on the internet, just from your own ideas. Okay. No right or wrong answer. One page only, please. And make sure you write your name and the course name and the date, today's date for this assignment, and send it to me using email. Okay. Assignment 1, send it to me by email. The question is, what are the most important gender issues for me? And I look forward to reading your responses based upon your own life and your own thoughts and your own concerns. Question about anything else before we close?
So last day of the submission of first assignment.
Yes, it has to be submitted between now and next week. So the deadline is next Sunday.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have had the great pleasure of listening to you today and learning from you and sharing with you. May you have great success and increase in knowledge and be in the best situation, hopefully with the support of our Creator and all those who can be of benefit to us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Waalaikum assalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakallahu khairan.
Thank you. Very enjoyable class. Very nice. Interesting.
Have a nice week.
You too. Thanks.
Assalamualaikum.
Salam.